Welcome to the Amplifyr Podcast. I'm your host, Aidan Hennebry. The Amplifyr Podcast exists at the intersection of sales, marketing, pricing, leadership, and business, where we meet with real people deep in the trenches so that you can learn how to cut the noise and amplify your signal. Today, we're sitting down with Jordan Rice, who's a guy who has worked with some of the biggest retailers globally and across Canada, specifically in their customer experience, in order to discuss how any company, any business can level up their marketing and customer experience in order to create a better company. Jordan has years and years of real world experience, which you're going to hear come alive in this episode. There is so much to chew on here, and I'm so excited to share this with you. Let's get into it. Jordan, welcome to the Amplifyr Podcast, man. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
Yeah, man. When I was dreaming up this podcast, you were actually, I think, one of the first dudes I texted this summer to be like, hey, I'm thinking about starting a podcast, and would you be willing to be on it? And that I was very happy when you were like, totally gung-ho. Oh, yeah, man, I'm in, which meant a lot to me. Just because I know, over the years when we talked shop that you have a lot of hilarious stories, as you do. It's a very Jordan Rice thing of you, but a lot of really interesting and valuable, I think, lessons and things that you've learned over the years that would be really, really helpful to other people along the journey. So anywho, maybe just to kind of kick us off there, can you, for anyone who doesn't know who you are, can you just give us a bit of an overview, kind of your career, your trajectory, and kind of where you've been and kind of where you've come to the table today?
Yeah. So again, thanks for having me. I've worked for a lot of big retailers, a lot of household names, both multinational and national here, specifically in Canada. And I really fell in love with retail at an early age. I'm sure like most Canadians, they started off in hospitality or retail, and I started off in retail, and I just fell in love with like dealing with customers and helping them find that product they needed to, satisfy whatever need or service they had. So I've made a career at it in retail. I love it. I love dealing with people. I love the exchange of goods. I love driving KPIs. So that's really where my wheelhouse lands. I guess as the industry has evolved and customer behavior has changed, I really fell in love with customer behavior and customer experience. And that's where I find myself today. And that's where I continue to drive my career forward by working with big retailers and whether that's direct to consumer or direct brick and mortar, just really find a love for that. And that's where my passion lies. So.
I love that, man. So maybe just for anyone unfamiliar with exactly what that means, do you want to describe kind of like super practical terms? What does that look like to kind of, at the level that you work at, to work in kind of consumer experience and some of those things?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a lot of misconceptions around what customer experience is. A lot of people think, is it the way a website behaves? Is it the way a store feels? Like, do we have the right music? And do we have the right displays? And that is all part of the bigger recipe for a consumer experience, or customer experience rather. But I think at the heart of customer experience, it's all about understanding how your customers are behaving and how you want them to behave, and understanding that gap and helping close that gap. And it's really, a lot of customer experience is very scientific. It's very rooted in the data that you're collecting from your customers to understand just how they're behaving and how you want them to behave. And I think at the biggest level, it's all about, I think someone once told me, and I love this saying, it's all about head, heart, and hand for a customer. So how is your customer feeling about your product, your brand, your experience? What's their heart telling them? How do they feel about your brand? What's their affiliation to you? And then does that move the needle? Does that inspire them, encourage them, motivate them to go and use your service or buy your product? So I just love this stuff. There's a lot of psychology behind it. There's a lot of quantifiable data behind it. And it's really, to be successful in this space, it's all about how to marry this psychological customer behavior piece of it with the data piece of it. So in a nutshell, that's kind of how I define customer experience. I think it's been widely defined differently. There's there's no courses in university or college on it. It's not like it's not like a customer experience 101. So a lot of people look at it differently. Like I find a lot of organizations say, yeah, we have a great customer experience team. Tell me about it. Well, our call center does this and our contact center does that. I'm like, well, like, what about the leading up to the experience, the in the moment experience at time of purchase, and the post-purchase experience? It's really that looking at the customer life cycle as a whole. And that's really, to me, how you define customer experience.
Man, that's deep. I love that. That's so good. There's already like 700 different ways I can see that we can take this conversation. Maybe going back to, you said the head, the heart, and the hand. How does that influence the way that you guys make decisions at a very high level? Because obviously a lot of the work, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the work that you do, or at least a lot of the teams that you work most closely with, are at a very kind of high and corporate level. So how does, thinking of the customer experience through those three lenses, how does that work its way into what you do, practically speaking? Yeah,
so I mean, I like to think of myself as a very in the trenches type of guy. So, we develop strategies at a more senior level, but those strategies only hit traction when you get down to the people level, whether that's your retail associates at brick and mortar level or your back-end programmers on a direct-to-consumer site. So with the head, heart, and hand, really the head part is how the customer thinks about it, right? So even before they've entered your store or landed on your site or, procured your services, how are they thinking about you? How are they thinking about the service? What is the need that they have that you're trying to solve for? What are the solutions you're trying to provide them, and how do they think about that? So from that part, it's all, again, going back to the cycle of it all, it's all about how the customer is perceiving you, perceiving your brand, perceiving your product, your service, even prior to them making that purchase, right? So that's the pre-purchase part. So you really want to make sure you have a really thoughtful and intentional strategy around that. And that's where you can pair up with your marketing partners. That's where you can pair up with your finance partners, whether that's pricing or your logistics partners on how you're going to get that product to them. It's all about that pre-purchase. What's that customer thinking about, and what's the problem you're trying to solve? Then when it comes to the heart, how are they feeling about it, right? How do they interact with that product? How is that product going to make them feel? How is that product going to solve a problem that they're having? So you see a lot of that in tech. A lot of customers are looking for a solution that will solve a problem and make their life easier, make them more profitable. So really trying to understand how to equip your offering or your go-to-market strategy with how they're going to feel about it and what satisfaction they're going to get from it. And then the hand part is, are they going to make that click? Are they going to pull their card out? How are they going to interact with the product, and are they going to purchase? Are they going to sign up with you? Are they going to solicit your service, right? And then you circle right back to the head. So it's all about post-purchase. So congratulations, you've got that customer to procure your services, buy your solution, buy your product. But again, it's a full life cycle, right? So it's, how's that customer feeling about it post-purchase? Do they have any remorse? Are there any gaps that you missed? Are there any things you could have done better? And that's where great follow-up really helps understand back to that cycle of the head piece. Will they come back to you? Have you created lifetime value with that customer? Are they going to be, loyal to you when they have a number of different products and a number of different services or solutions at their disposal? So really that's how your strategy comes together. You got to look at holistically in the full life cycle of the customer.
Man, I like the way that those things kind of naturally create a cycle, right? And when you're talking about thinking about the post-purchase experience, I'm thinking of someone who stopped by a retail location, picked up something, so they actually did go through the whole process of head, heart, and hand, and they're at home, they're pulling it out of the bag, or they're going to use it if it's something, if it's a tool or something practical, whatever, if it's not, and just like, okay, even like, what is that experience, right? Do they have that remorse, regret? Was this, man, then you start getting into such like psychological things of like, was it priced appropriately, and is the value there? And I know that, those go-to-market strategies are something that you've focused on a lot. And one of the, the head, heart, and hand experiences that I feel like I have had for myself that was a really valuable lesson for me early on. This was shortly after Leanne and I got married. I was like working as a graphic designer. And so on the side, I was like, oh, it'd be cool. We live in the city of Hamilton. It's a cool, hip city. I'll make some posters. They'll look really cool and we'll sell them. There was like a monthly art crawl where all these different vendors come and sell stuff on the street, right? So I was like, oh, cool. So I dumped probably $500, $1,000 into prints and stuff. And tons of people would come by and go, oh, I love that. That looks so cool. And then they would walk away. And I made a total of like 2 sales that night, and that was about it. And I had all this merchandise. I was like, uh-oh. And I mean, I maybe went out like 1 or 2 other times after that, and that was about it. And it really helped me understand that having a really cool product is one thing, but having it be of enough value, at least in the customer's perception, that they are actually willing to make a purchase, that's a whole other like hill that you got to push the boulder over, right? Like it's, you can get the first 2 things, right? You can get the head rate and the heart rate, but if they're not willing to actually use their credit card and buy that thing, and even still, even if they do that and they get home and they have that regret or that awful feeling, that can kind of void the entire process and doesn't create a cyclical, a cycle, I guess is what I'm trying to say, right? So
sure.
That's just what I'm thinking about when I hear that. Is the head, heart, and hand, is that exclusive to like a particular place? Like, where did you learn that as a concept? Because you said there is no like, retail or customer experience school. So like, is that just like, is that a common industry thing, or what? How did you kind of pick up that framework, I guess?
Yeah, I think I had a really strong leader once upon a time, and he was always about how are they thinking about us? How are they perceiving us? There's so much competition out there. Like, why are they coming to us? And then working with that, that really stayed with me and ingrained with me. And actually in that same company, our marketing partners are really good about like, how do they feel about us? And how does that make them feel post-purchase? And then from my operational background, it was all about the hand, right? It's about, to your point with with your artwork there, is like, how do you get them to buy it, right? How do you get them to sign up? How do you get them to subscribe to your service or procure your solution? So I think, I don't know that anyone actually termed it for me, but the more I thought about it, and every time we put a strategy together, it was always like in my head about that cycle, right? That head, heart, and hand. How do we make sure that everything we're doing, from a marketing strategy to a pricing strategy to a post-purchase strategy, how is that all fitting within that cycle?
So when you're talking about the customer experience, I maybe want to dig into the head part a little bit, if you're cool with that, because what I think is interesting is like trying to, I'm losing my train of thought a little bit here. Differentiate yourself. That's what I was going to say. Trying to differentiate yourself, right? So when you're thinking about the way that your customers think about you, you said that you one of your past mentors had that, like, what makes us different? Why would they actually purchase from us, right? And I actually think that is like a billion-dollar question that a lot of companies don't have a really articulate answer for, and I think it harms a lot of, maybe at least on the smaller scale on the side that I work with. But I'm curious to kind of hear your thoughts of like, if a company doesn't know really kind of what their identity is, or really specifically what they want to be known for, or maybe they were known for something and now they want to change that, they want to go a different route in the future. Like, how do you begin to kind of find what is unique about you, and how do you start to chart a path forward, even if it's kind of messy or you're really just not sure? Like, do you have any experience with that where you've had to maybe go back to the drawing board a little bit to say, hey guys, who are we really, and does this make sense? Because again, going back to some of your go-to-market strategies and bringing on certain products or product lines and pitching to those companies how you're going to sell them in retail stores, I would imagine that a big chunk of that involves knowing the identity of your company and obviously your customer, and how those things mesh, and how this new product or product line or service or what have you is going to fit into that. So anyways, that was a really long-winded question, but I would love to know just kind of, some of your experience around that. Yeah,
I think really you got to root yourself in what your unique value proposition is. So whether you're Fortune 500 company or you're, like a local designer, you really got to figure out what your value proposition is and how that differentiates you from your customer. We actually, in a past life, we I worked for a retailer, and we were known for, how do I say this, offering, it was almost discounted pricing. Like we were perceived as a discounter. Okay. And that actually wasn't what we were trying to do, because our product, pound for pound, was actually more expensive than our competitors. But what we had is we had the ability for customers to purchase as much or as little as they wanted. So that was actually our unique value proposition, was giving customers choice. This was in a grocery setting. So when you looked at our product, customers would come back to us, our customer feedback loops, and be like, you're more expensive than everybody else. And we were like, not so many words. We're like, well, we never said we weren't, but we offer a higher quality product, and we give you the ability to buy as much or as little as you want. So that was what we had to root ourselves back in our unique value proposition. And that was the ability for customers to make a decision on how much they wanted to buy versus buying what most retailers were prescribing via their packaging. So kind of taking it back, we had to almost not scramble, but we're sitting in a boardroom. We're like, wait a minute, are we a discount seller, or are we a retailer who gives customer choice with an extraordinary product? And we had to take a step back and be like, we need to make a decision. We've kind of found ourselves at a crossroad there, and we said, no, we don't want to get off track of the product we offer, because we offer the best product. That was our value proposition. We wanted to stay firm in there, and we really wanted to lean in on what we were offering. And again, that was choice for customer. And through that, circling back to the head part, that was about building trust for our customers. We didn't want them to think that that's who we were. We wanted to make sure they knew what we stood for. And we supported that with a massive marketing campaign to try and, I don't want to say recondition, but re-educate our customers on who we were and actually what we were doing. And it took a little, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. That wasn't an easy journey. Changing your customer's perception of who you are, especially after, 40, 50 years in the business, is difficult. But again, we wanted to build that trust with them. We wanted to make sure that they believed in what we were actually offering. And again, that just circled right back to what our unique value proposition was. We weren't trying to blend in and compete with all these other, discounters. We wanted to really stand firm on what we believed in and what our unique selling proposition was.
That's fascinating. And, getting into the tension that exists between whether you want to be more price driven as a company or be more value driven, that's definitely a tension that exists, at least I would assume, in every industry, certainly in some of the industries that I operate in, that's true. And I think planting a flag in the ground to say this is what we want to be known for, and so even if that comes at the cost of the other thing, we believe so strongly in this that we're willing to do that. I think that's really cool. However, I would say that it's very difficult, especially if you go the value proposition way. At least in my experience, for companies, it's very difficult to almost hold to that, because the temptation is always to lean towards, let's offer a discount, or let's knock the price down, or is our margin too high on this, right? And so I wrote a newsletter once that talked about positioning McDonald's, the fast food chain, against the Keg, which is a steakhouse, and saying you can't have the Keg prices, you can't have the Keg quality at McDonald's prices, and vice versa, right? That you kind of need to choose if you're selling French fries or filet mignon, and you probably can't really, I guess you can get French fries at the Keg, but not McDonald's French fries at the Keg, and not for that price, right? But anyways, you kind of get what I'm getting at, right? And so
sure.
Was that a difficult thing for that company to say, hey, we're not going to become the kind of discount retailer, but we want to err on the side of quality and choice and variety there? Or was that did that come fairly naturally to be like, oh yeah, that's who we are, and to make that distinction of like, this is our identity, not that?
Yeah, it came fairly naturally. I mean, like I said, there was kind of a head scratching moment where we're all like, is this a defining moment for the organization where we do need to take a turn, or do we just need to come up with a really intentional and clever strategy to almost re-educate customers on what we're doing? So, again, we really firmly believe that we offered the best products, and that's what we wanted to do, because at the end of the day, going back to that heart, hand, life cycle of a customer and retention of that customer and providing lifetime value to that customer, we wanted to make sure that when they got home, they weren't like, oh, I got a great price on this, but I'm eating McDonald's fries. Mm-hmm. Whereas they got home, they're like, I really enjoyed that steak. I'm going to go back there. Right. And again, it's a bit different. That's a hard analogy to use because, the keg doesn't let you buy a little steak or a big steak if you want. But again, that was just rooted back in our value proposition. So, again, there was a moment where like, is this a defining moment where we want to make a change, or is this a time where no, let's stand strong in our values and what we bring to the table in this space?
That's wicked. I love to hear that. That's cool. Again, like I said, it's been my experience that is not always an easy thing for companies to decide. So I'm glad that it seemed like it was a fairly natural progression there. Maybe switching gears a little bit, maybe not specifically that work environment that you had, but maybe just broadly speaking, maybe just as a consumer, what is like a common pitfall that you've seen when it comes to launching a new product or customer experience or something like that? Like, I know there are many blunders, and certainly, for retailers of any kind, that bringing in a product does not always work, right? So I'm thinking even right now, if we're going back to McDonald's, I got McDonald's on the brain of them bringing in Shania Twain with all of her, Shania's, I don't know, picks or something like that, whatever, the campaign, right? And it might just be a campaign or whatever, fine, but launching products does not always go smoothly, I guess is what I'm getting at. So have you seen anything there, and is there any kind of take-home lesson from that to be learned about what not to do when launching a new product or dealing on kind of the customer experience side of things there?
Yeah, I think at the very initial stages of it all, it's like you got to make sure that's what your customers want. I've seen so many retailers and so many different direct-to-consumer sites like offer products or even offer like a solution or a service. You're like, who needs that? Like, I don't want that. And I mean, for me, it's difficult because I've got a lens on this stuff. So I always try and be objective. I like to ask a lot of friends. My wife won't even go shopping with me anymore because when I'm in a store, I'm like, feeling it all out. She's like, come on, babe, let's just get this and go. So I think the biggest pitfall is when an organization doesn't truly understand what their customer needs and what the customer wants. And there's a lot of companies who do very little, have a very little product offering, but they do it very well. Right. And you got other companies who are like, here's everything in the kitchen sink, and it almost confuses customers. It's like, I don't need that. Like, why are you bringing that? Why are you wasting valuable marketing dollars, hitting me with promotions, hitting me with marketing, advertising, direct communication on something I don't want? So really understanding your customer base and understanding, is this something they actually want, is a big part of it. Now, once you figure that out, I think the biggest part is alignment and engagement at your associate level, especially in brick and mortar, right? You want to make sure that everyone understands why you're bringing that product in and why you're bringing that service in so that they can speak to their customers about it. You almost want them to be, you want them to be advocates for it. You want them to talk about that. You want them to be excited about it. And you want them to be proud that you're offering it. So I think a big part on that is engaging your associates and making sure that they know what's in it for them, why we're bringing it in, what value is it going to bring to not only our organization, but more importantly, our customer, and getting them excited about it. So whether that's, table stakes, making sure they're trained and they can speak to it, but also how do you incentivize them? How do you make them proud of it? How do you make them energized around it? How do you get them excited to sell it for you? It is definitely paramount. And I've seen a lot of retailers fall on that where, there actually is a product that you want. You actually get marketing materials about it. You're like, oh, I love that. Like, I'm going to get on the site or I'm going to get to the store and I want to go purchase that. And then the site's like, little PMP picture, there's no information about it. You're kind of like, oh, that's it. Like, you got me all hyped up. You got my head and my heart going, and here I am. And you fell flat. Or, similarly, when you make the effort to get in your car and drive somewhere, which is huge for customers these days, and they cross that lease line and come into your space and your associates, oh yeah, that new product, that's just over there. It's like, well, no, like you got me fired up. Head heart is buzzing, and now I want to come and buy it, and you fell short here. So I think that's the two biggest common pitfalls is making sure that that's actually something your customers want. I mean, that sounds like a no-brainer, but it's amazing how many customers miss the mark on that. And then supporting it correctly on your site level and your store level, or, as a service provider, like walking your customer through it and getting them excited about it so that they see the value in it and they want to use their hand and pull out that form of payment.
No kidding, eh? Well, what you're talking about is, I think, exactly a common thing for a lot of companies. Again, regardless of your industry, your size, whatever, you think of, even if you kind of succeed at thinking through the head and the heart side of launching a new product, you're absolutely right that if you fail at not thinking of a product launch as an internal thing as well as an external thing, that you are absolutely losing opportunity there because your people don't know the products, right? I'm thinking of the Apple Genius Bar and how everyone in an Apple store, I'm positive, has an Apple device and has used them frequently, professionally and personally, and knows those things inside and out, and they can make recommendations based on that, right? And you just get a different vibe of the competency of these people. And I've heard rumors that Apple does 15 minutes of sales training at the start of every shift. I don't know if that's true. It seems hotly debated whether or not that's actually true. But it wouldn't shock me, because you look at the competency of their staff and you feel it, at least as a consumer. I mean, I haven't been in an Apple store in a couple of years now, but in general, the experience is like these people know what they're doing. They're not just hiring a 14-year-old kid off the street. It's his first job and he doesn't know the aisles apart from each other, right? I think that really thinking through the internal side of it, like you said, incentivizing your staff, making them huge advocates and evangelists for the new product, service, whatever you're offering, is an overlooked thing. And then circling back to the first thing that you were talking about making sure that what you are launching actually aligns with what your customers want. I'm thinking of, Tim Hortons when they started making burgers and pizzas and stuff. And like, fair enough, I actually heard that they were quite good. I never tried one for myself, because for me, I wish, and I feel like they're starting to kind of move in this direction, but my dream always is that Tim Hortons would really go back to basics, offer incredible coffee, donuts, cafe type snacks. You've already got a Tim Hortons on the corner of every street in every town in all of Canada. So you've got the reach there that you'll get tons of business just because of that. But not really losing sight of like, why do our customers come here? And I get that that's difficult, as you were talking about before. If you're trying to change your identity and grow as a company, that's a painful process. So you will have people like me mocking you that you offer pizzas and burgers now. Maybe that's really the direction you want to go, but I feel like quite often you retreat, and really it was kind of an exercise in ignorance, that you didn't really know what your customer wanted, and maybe you did end up launching the wrong thing, right? You said this earlier. I want to circle back to it because it kind of ties into this here. You were talking about, I think it was right in the beginning, about how data plays such a huge part in dictating customer experience and go-to-market strategies and stuff. I was talking with a friend of mine the other day on an episode of the podcast, and we were kind of talking about how it is, at least in his experience, maybe more on the consulting side, a tension between like science and data and art and kind of intuition and gut feel and kind of some of that more unexplainable type of decision making that goes on. And obviously if you err too far one side or the other, then that's probably pretty dangerous. But I guess I want to know from your experience, when it comes to working on customer experience, thinking about retail locations, things like that, do you lean much heavier in the data side? Do you lean towards the gut side of things? And have you ever had a conflict where maybe your head or your heart of, maybe it's executives or whatever, are telling you, hey, I think this is what we want to do, but the data from your customer says, well, this is really, what you probably should do? And if that's true, if you've kind of experienced that tension, how do you go about dealing with that?
Yeah, so I think if you were to ask the Jordan of 10 years ago, he probably would have said data. No, this is what customers are feeling, right? So, and I think that guest of yours nailed it. I mean, there is a real push and pull between data and gut feeling, right? Personally, I always start in the data. I think the data is a great foundation, but your data won't tell you everything. And I think it takes a true artist, if you will, or a really skilled professional to really extract the insights from the data, because the data will tell you things, but it won't tell you this. It won't tell you where to go. I shouldn't say that. It will tell you, it will give you some directional guidance on where to go, but it really just tells the story. And from there, you really need to go in with the less quantifiable information. But that being said, the story is always in the data. The answers are always in the data. The data will tell you how your customers are behaving, right? Based on post-purchase, right? So whether that's your CRM data, your POS data, your loyalty data, your online data, your site data, there's so much data. And sometimes you can get, data analysis paralysis because you're just going down rabbit holes finding things, right? So I think the best way to go about it is use your data as a starting point. Use that as a foundation for your decisions and your path forward. And then from there, build on what you need to do from a strategic decision. Because again, the data won't tell you what the strategy should be. I mean, with some evolving AI platforms, it's starting to, which is super cool. But I think the data is key. Like I said, the answers, the results are already in the data. Those chapters have been written. You need to take that data, understand how your customers are behaving, and then move forward with coming up, devising some strategies, some solutions to get your customers to behave the way you want them to behave, right? The data is kind of looking in your rear view. The strategy is looking through your windshield, right? How are you going to get there? How are we going to, execute these strategies or execute these objectives of ours by knowing how our customers responded, behaved, reacted to what we had previously done? Hopefully that answered your question.
Oh, yeah, it did. And what a powerful analogy, talking about the relationship between data and then kind of the strategy that you actually make from that, and thinking about them kind of as looking in two different directions. As you were describing that, I was picturing excavating dinosaur bones, and kind of how the thing is in there. You kind of just have to dig in and find it, right? I think that is kind of also an interesting way to look at it. But what you're saying again about the relationship there, I find just super fascinating, as just like good things to be thinking about as you're trying to sift through data and trying to determine the path forward for your company, right? I would love to know, has there been an experience that you can share, and again, you can leave out details, names, places, whatever, if you have to, of kind of how you've used data in order to successfully launch a product? And specifically, I would, you get bonus points from me if there was a place where maybe it was unconventional, or it was pushing in a different direction than maybe the company had been known for before, or just was not maybe what people would have suggested. I would love to know if you have any personal experience from that you can share.
Yeah, actually, bit of an interesting story. So coming out of COVID, that ugly thing that we all trying to forget about, but consumer behavior has drastically changed. I mean, you got to call a spade a spade. During those years of lockdown, consumers got really comfortable with buying online. They got really comfortable to shopping in their underwear, shopping, however they wanted, whenever they wanted. Yep. So making that adjustment was very difficult in a brick and mortar space. And based on the data we looked at and a lot of insights we got from industry journals and industry research, we learned that customers really loved the comfort of being able to shop at home, that low pressure shopping experience. But they missed coming into a store. They missed touching and feeling product. Especially in apparel, the magic happens in the fitting room. Like me specifically, I got a weird shaped body. I really need a fitting room. So I'm the type of guy, if I can't get to a brick and mortar store, it's like I order 5 things and then I return 4 of them the 4 that don't fit right. So we learned pretty quickly that, again, using the data and some research studies from some other institutions and associations, that customers were going to come back to the store. but they wanted that online shopping experience. So it sounds kind of funny. What are you going to do? So this retailer that I was working with, they took great pride in making sure that every customer was greeted the minute they crossed the lease line. So, you spend that time to get ready, to get, in your car, to drive to this location, find a parking spot, cross the lease line. And the minute you get in the store, someone's like, what can I help you find? And you're like, whoa, like,
pump the brakes.
Let me catch my breath here. Like, I'm just walking in. There's a lot of great memes about this where, the greeter or the greeters, there's some cosmetic retailers out there that the minute you walk into the store, you got 3 or 4 associates, like single file stood up. Yeah. And you're just like, whoa. So what we really wanted to do was, it sounds crazy, but we wanted to almost ignore the customer and give them some space. So we wanted to acknowledge them, whether that was with a smile or a hello, but we didn't want to jump down their throats or jump on their back right away. And that was very controversial. Everyone was like, well, what do you mean? Like, we're a retailer, like we got to greet them. And I was like, it's not that we're not greeting them, we're acknowledging them. But what we really wanted to do is create an environment where customer felt comfortable to buy versus pressured to buy, right? Like, think of that feeling as yourself as a customer. You walk in and you have space to get your bearings, to start thinking about what is it that I'm here for. Oh, maybe I'll get something else, versus, the minute you cross the lease line, someone peers in and is like, what can I help you find? And you're like, oh, give me a second. So we coupled a lot of data from both what we had from our NPS and VOC scores and how our customers were behaving on our site. We coupled that and paired it with a lot of research from the industry. And we devised this solution. And what we found is we saw some great results. Our CSAT scores and our NPS scores went way up. And we actually had a lot of customers saying, did you add more people to the store? Like, it feels like there's a lot more associates in your store, when really we were in a cost reduction phase and we were actually pulling payroll back. So it was very interesting to see how our customers reacted to that. And, selfishly, it was great because it was validated what our strategy should have been from the get-go. So again, just looking at how that customer felt when they walked in and trying to marry it with that online experience versus that in-store experience, and trying to bridge that gap a little bit to provide them with that space. And again, our main objective was to create an environment where the customer felt comfortable to buy versus a high pressure shopping experience. Man,
what a counterintuitive solution. That sounds like it worked very well. So that, I even just me listening to that, I relate to that I'm like, oh yeah, I don't want to feel like I'm being forced. I'm pretty comfortable talking to salespeople and associates, and usually when I'm at a restaurant, I'll ask the server, like, what's your favorite thing, or what do you eat, right? But that's, again, there's a difference between like being kind of social and conversational and feeling like you're talking to a used car salesman who's trying to just get you to walk off the lot with the...
Get that commission or get that sale. Yeah.
Absolutely. I know this is a super broad question, and so you can answer it in any way you like, but when it comes to the customer experience, okay, walking in the store, getting over the lease line, and then, kind of past that maybe first point of contact to someone just acknowledging them, are there any other, like, what other aspects, I guess, of the customer experience, especially in a retail environment, do you love the most, or do you think are the most important to kind of think about or emphasize, or is maybe something that is overlooked as like a real opportunity? So I'm, in my mind, I'm thinking of, maybe it's a restaurant owner that's listening to this. Maybe it's someone with a used bookstore, or their own, private, small little boutique clothing shop or something like that. But what are kind of some of the other things, from your experience on the larger retail side of things, that you love to think through and maybe problem solve, or just focus on the customer experience side of things in a retail location?
Yeah, so I'd say at the smaller level, you can never, ever take your foot off your associates. And that, not to sound like you're pressuring them, but you never lose sight of what value they actually provide. Because whether you're a small time pizza shop owner or bookstore owner, like, unless you're going to be there 24/7, you really got to rely on your people, and your people really make the magic happen. And even in that previous example, there's a lot more to that strategy that I didn't talk about, where our associates would circle back with that customer and look for cues on how to engage. So I think the most important part is, outside of your product or your service offering, is just how your people are to engage with them. You might have a plumbing business, you have 3 or 4 guys on the road. You can't be at every single customer house. You can't interact with every single customer. So how is your associates and your team representing you? And how are they making that customer feel about the purchase that they've made, or the service that they've solicited, or that solution that they get, right? So, the associate is at the heart of everything you do, and the associate is at the heart of your customer experience. They are your biggest brand advocates. They are they're your front line. They're they make your first impression, they make your last impression, and they create that value. I think as you scale up more into mid-market and bigger retailers or biggest service offerings, I think a trend you see that I'm actually really excited about is a lot of the digital enhancements stores are making. I think Uniqlo does a really cool job on having self-serve checkouts in apparel, which is, that was a super, adverse, and like everyone was kind of like, what are they doing? Like, this is going to have massive loss prevention problems. But you know what? The research is showing that it's working really well, and a lot of retailers followed. And I think what you'll see more is an evolution of this digital experience in stores. You see a lot of stores now, especially in the apparel space, with digital fitting rooms, where you can scan items. Yeah, so digital fitting rooms, it's really cool programs. And what it does is there's a scale of it. So there's some fitting rooms where when you get into the fitting room, you can scan the product, and it'll give you all sorts of product information. It will tell you what it pairs well with others. So, if you're buying, like, let's say like a blazer, and you scan that blazer into the fitting room, or RFID picks up, and this, screen will turn on and say, hey, that's a great blazer. You can really dress it down with like this nice pair of jeans. Let us know if you want us to bring you a pair. And there will be an option in that digital fitting room to, signal for an associate, and that associate will get a cue on their device being like, Aidan's in the fitting room. He's trying on this, Calvin Klein blazer, but he liked to, check it out with a pair of jeans. He's a size 34. Can you bring him these jeans? So it creates almost like a personalized shopping experience, almost like a personal assistant in the fitting room. Now, on the online space, there's some really cool technology coming out of Europe right now, where online, they'll get to know you. So you can set up a profile for yourself. Some companies go as far as you entering your measurements. So they'll show you how to measure your chest, your arm length, your neck, your waistline, your pant leg, everything. I'll show you how to do it. And it will create a profile. And on this online experience, you can almost do it's like augmented reality. Like, you can actually dress your
avatar,
your avatar, if you will, with different products to see how things can fit and work. So for instance, if you're starting a new job, and you want to get some different outfits together, but you don't want to spend a great deal of money, you can actually click and drag and play with how those products will fit, but how those products will look with each other. So there's some really cool stuff going on from an augmented reality perspective, from an in-store digital experience. And then augmented reality is huge, especially in like the homeware space. So, you can take a photo of your living room, and then you can go to a retailer, the ones who do it really well, and you can actually plug and play their furniture into your house. So you can say, how's this sectional going to fit? How's that armchair going to look in that corner? And it really gives that customer the ability to make sure A, it fits, B, it looks good, and C, that they're happy with it. So that's where you're kind of toying with their heart a little bit. And it's really elevating that experience for them to get them to click that they want it. So there's a lot of great enhancements that mid-market to larger scale retailers are making, both in store and on their sites, on the direct consumer space. But again, I think rooting back to smaller businesses, even the biggest businesses, the biggest Fortune 500, companies, what they do really well is they focus on their associate, and they really empower their associate. They get them inspired, they get them behind the brand, and they really drive that business for them. So actually, one of the companies I worked for, Home Depot, one of my favorite things about them was they had this pyramid, and it was an inverted pyramid. And you think that the CEO would be at the top, or you think the customer would be at the top. And as a customer experience guy, I would want the customer at the top. But I thought it was really cool. They had the associate at the top.
Wow.
So no matter what, everything they did was rooted in the associate, because their biggest saying and one of their biggest values is, if you take care of the associate, they'll take care of your customer and everything will follow. And I still get a little goosebumpy thinking about it, because you really see that with the way they operate. And it's truly inspiring. And that was an experience I took with me through, and will take with me as I continue in my journey here with consumer packaged goods, retail, and DTC. So I know that was a broad question, and that might have been a long answer to a short question.
Dude,
but
I loved it.
That's some of the, I think, where business owners, large or small, should really focus: the associate, and then how can you evolve your experience with technology, especially as these younger segments of customers are growing up and becoming, having more disposable income. You really want to focus on that, and not to leave your, let's say, less tech savvy customers behind, because you even see a lot of those stereotypical customers really adapting well to that technology and really picking up and adapting to it. So.
Wow, man, everything you're saying seems to, so first of all, just the tangent of all the digital tools being invented right now is wild. But what I find most, compelling, interesting about that is how, going back to what you said, right? The customer experience is kind of at the heart of that, and these changes that you're making in order to, again, go back to some of the different things we've been talking about. Think through, what is the customer going to perceive about this? How does it make them feel? How does it make them think? How does it make them relate to your brand? And trying to essentially lessen the barriers, right? So exactly, you're in the change room, you've got a blazer on, but you're like, I really could use pants. Well, instead of having to undress, get your other clothes back on, go back out there, find something, then go wait for the change room again, then go back in there, to make that as seamless as possible, which, I'm thinking in the digital world, you just open a new tab on your browser and you go back to the store and you just keep searching, right? To find clever ways that you can bring concepts like that together. Obviously on that scale, it's quite a large scale and would involve some investment in research and testing and whatnot. But I am positive that for the creative entrepreneur, there are probably more ways to do things like that than maybe what any of us are even really thinking about right now. And again, circling back to what you said about how the associate really being the face of the brand, I would say, right? Really the person that makes that business alive. One of my good business associates, Tim Windsor, he's pounded into me that, businesses don't exist, people exist. If I if everyone in the company quit the company tomorrow, the company would cease to function. So it is the people that make it up. And to me, I hear that in what you're saying about how the especially the associates that deal with the customer, that are there face to face. That's often, to me, where also you're going to hear, those associates are probably going to have really great feedback as well about what your customers think and the things that they say and what habits they actually have in terms of their shopping, right? And there's just so much value that can be gleaned from that. All it involves is a company that is willing to kind of listen, I suppose. And I think that, at least in my experience, I've seen just so many different companies, big, small, whatever, where there comes a disconnect between what you think a customer wants and what they actually want, right? You and I were talking just before we filmed about some of these business books on my shelf and how, in particular, why I like chatting with people who are not New York Times bestsellers on my podcast is because I really love the rubber meets the road aspect of what everyone that I've had on the show brings, right? I like that. What everyone that I chat with knows is based on real world experience and what they've actually experienced firsthand. So, anywho, I'm getting off track here, but I just find that, there's so much value to be gained from your associates, your frontline workers, if a company is willing to kind of dive into that and actually, glean all that you can and sort of, again, maybe get out of their own way and not just think, oh yeah, I know what this needs, and to go from there, right?
Actually, a great example of that, I was sitting in a meeting once with the president of one of these big companies, and he was like, I think we know what we got to do, and I think we know what we want to do, but I'm gonna make a few phone calls. And he dismissed the meeting. Well, it sounds bad. Like, the meeting had concluded, so he's like, leave it with me. And he's like, Jordan, come with me. And I was like, oh, okay. We went to his office. We must have phoned, I don't know, 10 stores. And we didn't ask for the general manager. We didn't ask for the associate manager. We didn't ask for anyone. Whoever answered the phone. Hey, we have this idea. What do you think? The data is telling us we should do it. The strategy is telling us to do it. It aligns with our roadmap. It aligns with our core values. Our customers are telling us they want it. What are your thoughts? And, naturally, most associates, when they hear the president on the phone, get a little nervous. I think that's why I had me there, because I made a lot of the calls and did a lot of the talking. But, we got a lot of we're like, we didn't think about that. We didn't, there was actually this one scenario where the associate's like, well, we do that, but we also already have that. Like, what's the difference? Like, help me understand the gap you're trying to, or the problem you're trying to solve, or the gap you're trying to fill. And we're like, oh yeah. So it was just, going back to that, I thought that was just a really great example of someone who was a very, very influential and very powerful individual at the top of a massive company who still took not a second, it took us some time to do it, but took the time to make sure that he had phoned some people to close those gaps. So I thought that was really cool.
What a good lesson, I think, for leaders of any kind, right? Because if what you said is true, that it aligns with our core values, the customers are saying they want it, we think it's the right direction, blah, blah, blah. You'd probably feel like you have all of the data to go ahead and do that, right? And so, to reinforce what you were saying earlier about data being kind of half of the story, and then the strategy and what you actually do with it being the other half of it. Sounds like a really strong leader to be kind of humble enough even just to be like, let's just call around and let's just get some opinions here, right? I can imagine, for sure, that would have a profound impact on you to be part of that, for sure, and to hear people that will actually, tell you, hopefully, the truth of like what they think about it, and even just ask simple questions of like, oh, well, we already kind of have that. Is that not already doing that? And be like, oh yeah, we never really thought about that. That's a good point, right? That research ahead of time from every possible angle, and not out of it doesn't sound like out of fear or concern, or like he or she was a nervous leader, but wanting to do it to know like, hey, we are investing all of our time, resources in the right direction that actually aligns with where we want to go, right? One of the things I would love to ask you about is your experience kind of managing people. So you're talking about being a good leader there, and the lesson that you learned there. Maybe for you as a leader of people, I know, we've chatted a bit about it informally in the past, just about some of the different highs and lows that being a leader of people comes with naturally. One of the things that I feel like I can hear echoing in my head that I've heard you say before is about downstream impact. When someone comes to you wanting to do a project or do something, that one of the like 2 questions you ask, if I'm not mistaken, is like, well, what's the downstream impact? How does that affect other things? And okay, have you checked in with those people? Is it really risky to do that? Whatever. And I think that's really cool. Do you have any other experience, stories, whatever, that you can share, whether it was you as a leader and you were learning more great things from other leaders as you were developing as a leader yourself, or things that from your years in the trenches as a leader that you finally learned that you're like, oh yeah, I should really do this, and it makes leading a lot easier? Is there anything you want to share there?
Yeah, I think through the years, I really leaned too much into leading with empathy without accountability. So it's obviously super important, whether you're dealing with your paperboy, your wife, your friends, your colleagues, your team, to really lead with empathy, understanding how they feel about something, what they're going through, and just making sure that you take the minute to step back and be very objective to what they're saying and what they're asking for. I found in my career I went a little too far on the empathy thing, on the empathy side rather, and I wasn't pairing it well with accountability. So making sure that I still held my team accountable to what they were trying to achieve despite what they were going through. And I think there's a very fine line there. And what I learned quickly was showing them that not only was I there to support them and that we're working shoulder to shoulder, but making sure that I understood how I could help them, right? So it was always like, okay, understand you're going through this, understanding you're having this problem with this team or having a little bit of friction or uphill battles with some of those downstream impacts. How can I support you? And really coaching them through that, asking them a lot of thought-provoking questions, because you always want them to come up with the answer so that they feel a little bit more empowered, right? So really taking a coaching perspective, or a coaching approach rather, between that pillar of empathy and that pillar of accountability. Because a lot of leaders are like, I don't care, just get it done. And that's way too far accountability side. Other leaders are a little too empathetic. And I was there like, okay, well, maybe we can push these timelines, or maybe I'll go back to finance and ask for a little bit more budget. So it was really about bridging that gap by taking a really proactive coaching approach and asking a lot of thought-provoking questions. Like, a lot of the time I thought I knew what the answer was, so I'd ask them questions to try and get them to derive the answer that I wanted. Because I find when someone comes up with the answer on their own, they own it a little bit more. They take a little bit more accountability, and they're a little bit more inspired to go and drive a little bit further. So I think that has been something that I continue to work on, because I think that coaching piece, whether that's bridging the gap between empathy and accountability, whether that's bridging the gap between a low performer and a high performer, whether that's bridging the gap between a high performer and the next promotion, it's all about coaching, and it's all about developing those people to get to be more effective in that space. Because I find the more you invest in your team, the more time you spend with them. And I'm going to say, I don't care how many meetings you sit in. I don't care how busy you are. You always got to make that time. Some of those coaching sessions take 3 minutes. Let's go grab a coffee. Let's talk. How did this go? What problems are you facing? Like, what if you tried this? What about that? Like, those little moments really empower and build your team and develop them so that those problems start going away, right? So the more time you spend coaching and developing your team, selfishly, the easier it makes it for you as the team leader, and the more gratifying it is to see these people become high performers and get promotions, So I think that was a leadership lesson that, I'm still continuing to try and hone in on and harness, because everyone is busy, right? Like, sometimes there's days where I'll sit in a meeting from 7 a.m. with our team in India all the way to 8 p.m. with our team in the West Coast. So you still got to make that time to have those coaching sessions, whether that's a 3-minute coaching session, whether that's formal, bi-weekly development meetings where you can talk about some of the struggles they're going at, or always just having like an open door. And I know that's kind of a buzzword, open door. We actually didn't have doors in a lot of our offices in our company, but just making sure that you were there to support your team and to build your team and to develop your team and see them flourish. So that's still something, like I said, I'm working on. It sounds very easy in theory, but it is something you got to be very intentional with and really make sure you're making the time for.
Oh yeah, man. Absolutely. Have you seen the movie Inception? Do you know the movie Inception?
Yeah.
I think about like planting ideas in people's heads like Inception, where the entire point of the movie, if you haven't seen Inception before, they plant dreams deep in the subconscious of this guy. It's like 3 or 4 layers deep or something. I don't know. I can't remember. I got lost somewhere on the way. But the idea being that if you bury it deep enough that they don't know it was your idea and not their idea, and then they feel empowered to do it, right? And I often think about leadership like that if you do it right, because that has been absolutely the case for me, man. That when I first went from being self-employed to being a people leader, as a self-employed guy, I was used to being the guy that did everything, right? I had the idea, I did the idea, I evaluated the idea. And so in the beginning, I would bring my team like a blueprint. I'm like, here's what you got to do, just go do it. and they were miserable. And so even if I was right, where I would debrief after, I was like, yeah, but was I right? And they're like, yeah, but you were kind of a jerk about the way that you did it. And so when I started including them in the brainstorming component of what I was trying to develop, man, like the engagement went way up. And then certainly over time has just like skyrocketed, right? And what you said is entirely true, at least in my experience, that you stop having to solve the same problems for your team when you empower them to solve their own problems, right? I had a shop teacher in high school, and it was a computer shop, and one of the things that he insisted on when we were learning a new Adobe product was I want you, if you have a question about anything, I want you to try everything you can yourself to figure it out. Then I want you to go to like the help bar, and this is like in the mid 2000s, so the help bar was not very useful. He's like, go to the help bar, try to find it yourself, ask one of your friends if they know the answer, Google it, and if after all of those things you still can't figure it out, then you can come to me and I will try to help you. But the lesson that he was teaching us, and I think it's so valuable, is the most important thing I can teach you is how to teach yourself. And that has been something that has stuck with me for years and years, and something that I want to impart to my team, whether it's someone that I am, I'm a direct manager over, or I'm just a business associate or peer of theirs, is that ability to solve your own problems and to have the level of confidence to go after it, is so valuable. It's a teach a man to fish, give a man to fish type of situation, right? Like the value of that in the immediate is so beneficial for you, but then beyond that, what you're doing is you are giving someone a tool that they can have long after they're ever working for you, right? And I mean, what a better thing, I can't think of a better thing to do than to, genuinely try to make the world a better place and make someone's life better than it was before, right? That idea of really including your team has been super valuable to me. Do you maybe...
it becomes even more important or beneficial, especially as the problems become more dynamic, because using your example there, like there's not always a help bar. Google might not even be able to solve it. AI might not even be able to solve it. Like there are some dynamic problems that you really need some thought behind it. And even if your associate or your team member doesn't have a number of avenue or a lot of friends to ask or a lot of colleagues to ask, the fact that they come to you and just be like, okay, this is the problem. This is what I've thought about. This is how I think we can do it. This is how I think we can solve for it. How do you feel about that? Even that takes a lot of that pressure off of you as a leader. But the most important thing is it's really empowered that associate to feel not only feel comfortable and safe to come to you with a problem, but also speed of resolution, right? It just becomes more important as the problems become more dynamic and as the time becomes more limited for those associates to feel more empowered, to feel more engaged, to feel more confident to come to you with those things. So I always love watching, when you first have a team member and you start working with them and how they evolve and how they start approaching you with different, either ideas or problems or solutions. It's very gratifying to see that. But again, also makes your life a lot easier as a leader.
Oh, yeah. Well, this kind of goes back to before we hit record, we were talking a little bit about AI and how AI tools can help you, at least I describe it as, solve some of your kind of like low-hanging fruit, annoying, time-consuming tasks and problems in order to free you up for much bigger, more valuable projects and problems that you need to work on, right? And so that's not, that's not necessarily a one-to-one to having a team that you are outsourcing work to, essentially. But, when it comes to reducing problems that really are not that valuable or don't have a very big downstream impact, that it's like, hey, why don't you just make the decision and let's see what happens, and then we can just reevaluate and go from there, right? For sure, there is hardly a better feeling than watching someone who previously struggled or was kind of nervous or timid to make a decision when you start to see them willing to do that more and more, and absolutely, it does reduce the load on you, which again just brings your entire team into this ability to start solving bigger and more dynamic and more interesting problems, right? Yeah, I mean, so cool. Has there been a lesson or a really maybe challenging experience for you as a leader where you learned something super valuable from that? So one of the examples in my mind, I'll try to be as vague as possible so I'm not throwing anyone under the bus, but I know that even at times when you've had to let someone go on your team, when it was just the writing was on the wall, it was just not a good fit, whether they had checked out, their performance wasn't there, whatever it was, I know there have been opportunities where, you would fly down to meet with them and then take them out and let them go, which is never a pleasant experience. But then I don't know if it was in that moment or later they thanked you and said like, man, I really thank you for being the one brave enough to do this. Right. And I often think like if you do leadership right, like there's kind of an element to that that's incredibly challenging to do, but can be insanely gratifying to know that doing the difficult thing is often the right thing. And this is just integrity in general, right? But it is by being the person to do that, especially when you are in a position of leadership and authority, you are empowering your team to say, he can do difficult things. I can also do difficult things, right? I had someone describe leadership once, good leadership versus bad leadership. And bad leadership is when your team looks at you and says, wow, I could never do what he does. But great leadership is when they look at you and go, wow, if he can do it, I can definitely do it. And so that's always, kind of been another thing that's been in the back of my mind. But anyways, I'm just curious if you have any, big experience or something maybe kind of from a crappier experience or more negative side of the equation that was a really valuable learning moment for you that you can share.
Yeah, I think, leadership isn't all glory. Obviously, to your point, there are some very down times with people decisions that you need to make. And I learned at an early age that, it's not always personal and business is business. And sometimes you have to make those difficult decisions with your team. And the lesson I learned is that one time I did have to let someone go and it was a performance issue. And I felt a great deal of guilt for months after. Because in my mind, I was like, did I give everything he needed? Did I support him the way he needed to be supported? He was also in another part of the country reporting into me. He lived in the West Coast. And I'm like, was he disenfranchised? Did I engage him enough? Like, I just had a lot of guilt about it. I had a lot of self-reflection and, a bit of, I guess maybe not, remorse might not be the right word, but I wasn't confident in my decision. So what I learned from that was moving forward, before I ever got to that place again, I really looked into if it was a will versus a skill thing. And I always wanted to make sure that I was confident in my approach to making sure that even my guy doesn't like this part of
your dog doesn't like this part of the story.
He's like, you're right, Jordan. So really just the lesson I learned from that is I never want to feel that way again. And I never want that. I never want that associate or that team member of mine to be like, well, that wasn't fair. So actually in your example, where the person actually thanked me, we spend so much time developing that person. We gave them all the tools, all the training. We flew other people from other parts of the country out to work with them. It honestly got to the point where they had the will. He was trying. The skill wasn't there. He just couldn't bridge that gap. I mean, he grew in the company and he got to a point where, unfortunately, he topped out a little bit. And despite all the training, all the mentorship, all the development, sometimes you just got to make that hard decision. And when I actually went out there to meet with him and to have this difficult conversation, he did thank me because he said that there was nothing more you guys could have done. I just couldn't get there. And so thank you for, essentially relieving the tension and thank you for all the effort you put into me. And that made me feel, even though it's a terrible experience always having to, exit someone from a company, I felt proud of myself that we did do everything. So I didn't have that guilt. I didn't have that, ill feeling towards him. Like, he tried, I tried, it just didn't work. It just wasn't working for him, me, or the company at that given time. He's gone on to do wonderfully successful things. He's thriving. But yeah, like, going from an example where for months I was thinking, was that the right decision? Did I do everything I could have, to coming all the way over here where I was like, you know what? I did everything I could. He did everything he could. We tried. We made a good, valiant effort at this. It just wasn't working out. So that was a big lesson there. And it was just rooted in how I felt. I just never wanted to feel that way again. So yeah, maybe that was a bit of a long-winded answer to a short question, but those are some of the leadership lessons I learned, especially in those more difficult, less, glorious leadership times.
Well, I think, what you found to be true in that situation, I'm thrilled to hear it, is like, it is my belief that if it is just not working with a team member, and you know beyond a shadow of a doubt, you can lay your head down at night and not feel guilty and stare at the ceiling all night, and you know that you've given it your all, and you know that team member has as well. My belief then is that if this is not the right fit, there must be a right fit out there, and there is an opportunity out there that is better suited to their skill set, their personality, their temperament, their desires, their goals in life, that they will be able to find something else. And so when you are, choosing to have to let someone go, which again is a very difficult thing to do, and welcome to leadership. That's often what it means, is doing the unpopular thing, but trusting that in the end it will make sense and it'll be good. And obviously you want to reduce that as much as you can, but really believing at your core, like, it's not that this person is a terrible person or that I don't like them or I wish them ill will. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that's true, but in general, someone you have invested in, someone you have tried as hard as you can with, to me, it seems to be very simple in the end, ultimately, that it's like, there is something better out there for you. This is not it. It was close and we tried and it wasn't all bad usually. But I just have to believe that there's something better out there for you. And so, as much as it sucks that I am, making the decision for you, usually it's mutual in the sense of like, if you do it right, certainly as a leader, there's, plenty of forewarning. It's not just this shocking thing where all of a sudden they just show up one day and they're never expecting it or anything like that. Like, it's, it's been part of conversations that you've had many times. And it's all just, it's just the accumulation of kind of the experience so far, right? Jordan, man, thank you so much for your time. I guess just before we wrap this thing up in full, I would love to give you the opportunity to look back on our entire conversation and see if there's anything that you would like to share as like a parting piece of wisdom. And usually the question that I ask by the time we get to the end of an episode here is kind of about like, if everyone forgot everything you and I talked about today, but there was one thing that they took away from this, what would you want it to be? And so obviously we spent quite a bit of time talking about retail and customer experience and working with associates and, what, customer desire and motivation. We've talked about leadership and managing a team and being under a great leader. So you can kind of have your pick. You can say a lot of things. You can say one thing, but is there one kind of core idea or foundational truth or something that has been super deeply, profoundly impacting for you that you would love to leave our listeners with today?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to the head, heart, and hand. I think that's something real easy for everyone to remember. And I also think that is immensely important, whether you're leading a Fortune 500 company or if you're just starting up your own small business in your local community. Just really taking the time to understand how your customer thinks, how their customer feels, and how to convert that feeling to a conversion on a sale or on a service. So for those who have associates, this head, heart, hand, your associate is at the middle of that. You can hit your customer with as much marketing, promotional activity. You can wow them. You can, surprise them, delight them. But if it comes down to just that interaction between your person and that customer, you really got to invest time and effort and really engage and motivate your frontline teams to deliver on that experience. So head, heart, and hand coupled with a really strong and engaged associate is a recipe for success in the customer experience space.
Well said, man. Well, Jordan, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. And if you're game, I would love to do this again in a year sometime and just like pick up and see where you're at and what new things that we've both learned in that time. So, dude, again, thank you so much, man. It's been so good.
Thanks for having me.
And that is our episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you or someone you know would like to be on the Amplifyr podcast, you have something interesting to say about marketing, sales, leadership, pricing, or business development, send me an email, aidan@amplifyr.ca, and I would love to talk to you. Until then, make sure you're subscribed either on YouTube, on Spotify, or Apple Podcasts in order to catch the next episodes that we release. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you in the next one.